Welcome everyone to the first ever episode of the Breaking Levers podcast. We'll be diving into all things motorbike with a focus on adventure and dual sport riding. We're starting off episode 1 with a banger as we've got a special guest appearance. We've got Lance, aka the Apprentice Adventurer on YouTube, and Lance rides a DRZ 400 named Sully, and he's done some big trips within Australia on it. These include crossing the Simpson Desert solo, unsupported, which I'm keen to get stuck into. And he loves all things adventure, including hiking and mountain biking. And not only is his DRZ a tank, but he himself is built like a brick shithouse. So hopefully we can get some good gym tips from him too. Welcome to the show, Lance.
Mate, it's a pleasure. I'll have to correct you with a DRZ, a DRZ. I cop so much slack for saying Z all the time. So apparently it's a DRZ only is all we're allowed to say in Australia. So I've learnt the hard way anyway. But it's a pleasure to be here.
No, thank you. And you're right. But I don't think I'm ever going to change. I'm so used to calling it the DRZ that it's hard to change.
Yeah.
But I'd imagine you having the channel and uploading videos, you probably get a lot of comments. So
Yeah, all the time.
awesome. Well, like I mentioned, you've done some solo trips, and something that I really wanted to get stuck into straight away is your channel is focused mostly around solo riding. Why solo? Is that the preference when you head out for a ride?
Yeah, for me, I used to do only a few little rides with my father, and I think if people watch my channel a bit, I don't really talk about it much anymore, but he passed away, I want to say 2017, just as I was starting to wanting to get into some big trips. Um, and I rode with him, a couple of overnighters here and there, and I had the bigger bike at the time. And when he passed away unexpectedly, my attitude was, why wait? Let's just start riding now. And I just started going solo because it was easier. I didn't have to plan for anybody. And if I had a last minute, a couple free days, I would just go. So, and that's rolled into me just doing my own thing. And I'm quite comfortable doing my own riding or my own hiking. Yeah, so solo is my preference anyway. And I have done a few group rides, but solo is just easier, to be honest. It's just you can just go when you want.
Yeah, no, I myself, I've done a few solo day rides, and I have done a single solo overnighter, and I can see the appeal to it. But one thing that I don't know, I'm not gonna say I was scared, but like not having phone reception and being out there on your own, I was just
Yeah,
worried that there's some like dodgy
yeah.
murderer or scary character. Does that ever cross your mind when you're out there on your own?
Yeah, I'm a bit weird in that way, but 100% in terms of being scared or maybe just lacking the confidence, whatever you want to call it. But I sort of thrive off that, so I purposely put myself out there to try to, I guess, better myself. 100% when I was in Victorian high country in the bottom of those valleys with zero reception, like on the time sort of tightest tracks or the steepest hills. Like if something went wrong, like it's not going to be great. But I don't really get, I guess you could say, scared until the sun goes down and I'm sitting by myself in the middle of nowhere because I've ran out of daylight. And you start hearing some weird noises in the bush or whatnot. But I've the next morning you wake up and you go again. So, but I've been very, very lucky to not have a major breakdown or a major injury on one of my solo trips yet. So I do believe that day will happen one day. Obviously, I don't want it to be an injury, but how you handle that, I guess that's just a bit of character building is how I look at it. And hopefully it doesn't happen and you can just have a good solo solo experience, really. But if you dwell on it, because I did in the beginning, you don't go anywhere. So I always say to anybody who watches my channel and says, "Oh, how's this solo business going for you?" Start small and just go a bit bigger and a bit bigger. And there's people who travel the whole world solo, so it's definitely possible, and it's quite enjoyable once you get out of your own sort of mind, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I think that's probably where I lack is just I haven't probably done it enough.
yeah,
I guess something that was comforting from my perspective was having the PLB. Is that something that you carry, any kind of emergency beacon device?
Yeah, I'm pretty. Yeah, as I said, if people watch my channel, I'm pretty renowned for not having a whole lot of tech. But I have a basic PLB, which is what I'll take hiking or motorbike riding. Sometimes mountain bike riding, but I don't. Yeah, I don't have any satellite communication in terms of I can send a text message. Um, so I'm only as good as pressing the emergency beacon and waiting a couple hours or a couple of days or whatever it may take. I do try to with my wife. I will plan where I think I'll have reception, and I'll always tell her, but I will text or ring when I get to this certain location. But I always say, if you haven't heard from me from this particular day, give me 24 hours because it may have just mean I didn't make it and I'm stuck without reception. But the way I figure it in Australia, you should get reception at least once a day somewhere, unless you're camping. Where I never camp of a night time, so generally I'll have reception to at least say, hey, I'm okay, and then we start that process again for the next 24 hours to 48 hours anyway. Yeah.
Okay. So for something like the Simpson Desert crossing that you did, was it ever a consideration to get, something like the InReach, where you've got that ability to do the two-way communications, or to let your partner know that you're okay in the middle of the night when you've camped up in the desert there?
Yeah, we've discussed it, but like it probably appears that I ride all the time in terms of major adventure rides, but I only probably need to go once or twice a year. And the membership fee of that, I know a lot of people would say, well, you can't put a price on your health or whatnot, but in my opinion, for the Simpson Desert, I was under the impression and was correct in once I got there that I was going to see more people there than I was in probably the Victorian High Country or even in my own backyard in the Blue Mountains. So once I got to Mount Dare, I sent a text and made a phone call. And then I saw, like 8 to 9 people on that trip, which was more than I saw when I had reception on some of those other remote trails. So I, yeah, look, I would recommend having something like that. For myself, I guess I'm so used to what I'm doing, I'm just sticking to it. But hey, that might backfire on me one day. But I mean, the Simpson Desert, it's quite a frequent area, so someone's probably bound to come along on the main track anyway. Yeah, that's probably a bit silly, but that's my approach anyway.
No, I guess that's not silly, because I'm in the same boat where I only carry a PLB with just the emergency beacon, and that's it. In saying that, I haven't done something like a Simpson Desert crossing, which I do plan to in the future. So I guess that's why I was curious whether you thought about having that two-way communication, because I guess if you were in a situation where you needed to activate it, it would be nice to be able to communicate with those first responders. But like you said, the subscription cost is really hard to justify, especially if you're only doing one of these big trips where you're not going to have service for longer than 24 hours, once or twice a year. So no, I agree with that.
Yeah, and like I said, Australia, like I've one of my New South Wales trips I had, and obviously it's only as good as if you're going to crash a crash where you have reception, but I had no reception and I was in the middle of nowhere literally, and there was some little farmstead about 3 clicks from me, and all of a sudden I was piggybacking off their Wi-Fi, and I could actually make a WhatsApp chat happen. So I think because I've learnt the slow way by starting small and going bigger, I've realised that reception is pretty good in Australia considering. And so I mean, if you're going to press the PLB, obviously shit's hit the fan. That's in my opinion, that's for a major injury, or your bike's broken down and you've seen no one for about 24 hours. And then it's probably worthwhile pressing that, because I'll always bring enough food and water to get me by at least a day or two. And then I'll press it. So I'd rather have that instant response worrying about texting some emergency services. Just here's my location. Come and get me, please. So yeah, but it'll work. It'll get us out of trouble if need be. That's the main thing.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And I guess now that we've brought it up, what were your overall thoughts on doing the Simpson Desert crossing? It did sound like you mentioned earlier that you saw more people than you anticipated. Did that kind of change uh, the feeling of, oh man, like how big of an undertaking that was, or was it? Because based on the
Nah.
videos, your video and other videos that I've watched, it looks pretty insane. Like,
Yeah, I mean, if I could go back and redo that video, I would, because I've learned a lot myself, because my channel is based on me just learning as I go as well. And I could have recorded so much more moments, but the Simpson was weird for me because I was meant to do it in just before COVID hit. So when I was going to do it, I was just going to load my bike up. I had no experience in sand riding, but I knew how to ride, but not desert sand where it's ongoing. Um, And then COVID shut it down in terms of interstate travel. So I did a last minute New South Wales trip where I just rode everywhere really. And then all of a sudden, I wasn't really ready to do it in terms of the timing, but I think it was May 2021. Once again, don't quote me on how bad COVID was at the time, but there was this little gap where you could kind of just go back into state when you had if you applied for one of those border passes or whatever it may be. And I just said to my
I,
wife, hey, I've got
yep,
time off. And I just went for it. So I was underprepared probably mentally. Um, but that was probably the best thing because I just didn't worry. I just went for it. And it was really weird because when I got to the border, which was it, because obviously my Simpson Desert trip's a standalone video, but it was actually part of a 9-day massive 5,000 kilometer ride from Sydney to Brisbane. Um, and so when I got into South Australia, it was so dead. There was nobody that you'd expect to be there. And I saw one road train for like, 2 days. And he ended up being the nicest bloke ever. But when I got to the Simpson Desert, I went to, I guess the kick in the guts for me at the time, or a bit of a daunting feeling, was the ladies at Mount Dare pub or hotel. They were just like, oh, we haven't seen anybody all day go through except for one guy who's the guy who just left before you. And I was like, oh, is that pretty common? They're like, no, it's normally, when they say busy, like not like a freeway, but you've normally got every couple of hours, there's probably somebody wanting to start their trip, whether it's a four-wheel drive or bike. And the pub was there. It was just me sitting in there, and the other guy had just left in a red four-wheel drive of some sort. And then their words to me were, which was scary, but also very refreshing. They said the guy that just left, he would be your backup, but I wouldn't count on him because I don't think he knew what he was doing. Not to put that guy down, but that was what they said to me. I'm like, oh man. And then they said, but don't worry, people have been doing this for 50 years with a far less equipment, and they've always gotten through. Um, and then I go, yeah. So I had a chat to them, but then they also said to me, and I can't confirm or deny if it's true, but they said the conditions now are the worst we've seen in 30 odd years, literally, as long as that family's been there, whether it's 30 or 20 years. And I didn't know what that meant because I've never done the Simpson Desert. So I just assumed it was going to be hard anyway. But as I progressed in, I could see what they meant by all the flood damage. No one's been there because of COVID as well. So anyway,
mm-hmm.
I just went for it. I had my bike way overloaded. Like I don't think I probably would. I had my bike way overloaded. I just had jerry cans all over my bike. And I just went for it, but I soon quickly found out that it was going to be tough. It doesn't really start getting sandy until about probably past Dalhousie Springs, which is the hot water springs. I didn't know that at the time, but it was so rocky. It was probably the roughest section of the trip thus far, but that trip is known to have caravans and whatnot go on it because you can get the Dalhousie pretty easily normally. And it was
Mm-hmm.
just like a river had flown through the terrain. Like it was so weird to experience. I believe it's been obviously fixed up since. But as I passed Dalhousie Springs, I learnt very, very quickly how hard sand riding was going to be for me. And I did read a lot of articles where people would literally travel 20 kilometers in a day, couldn't pick up the sand riding and had to turn back because it wasn't going to be viable. Like if you're doing 20 or 40 kilometers in one day, clearly it's going to be a struggle. But I learnt quickly. I learnt standing up was a trick. I learnt to look far, far ahead. I learnt don't go too slow because that's just a recipe for disaster. I'm no expert at riding. I just like to call myself a bit of the apprentice adventurer. So I just try to do the best I can. But one thing I do have is I like to pride myself on mental toughness, and I just won't give up. If I can keep going, I'm going to keep going. And as as the wheels went around and I started picking up the trip, it just seemed to never end. Really, that was the reality. It just was ongoing and ongoing. My drama is I only gave myself a day and a half to do the trip, because I was on a tight time schedule to go to my brother's 40th in Brisbane. I kind of committed to that trip, planning to be at his house the day before. And the trip was just taking longer than expected to get to the Simpson Desert. So I just had to go for it. And then by the end of day one, I actually didn't enter the desert until 2 p.m. or 2:30 p.m. once I got past Dalhousie Springs. So I didn't leave myself much time. And that first section going west to east for me, I soon realized what they meant was hard in terms of the track conditions. If they didn't say anything, I would have just assumed that was the Simpson Desert day in, day out. But it was just so chopped up. It was real short little stutters where, it might be a half a meter deep and your whole bike just sinks in. You feel like your bike's about to break in half. You feel like your subframe's about to break in half. At this point, you've got full fuel still. I had a 10 litre jerry can, a 3.5, and a 5 litre jerry can because I didn't know how much fuel to really bring. Um, and then it was just rough. And I dropped my bike once on my leg, got stuck under my bike, and that was a bit of a wake up call. But thankfully, it was sand, and I was able to kick my bike off me. And that was a reality too. If I had a big, heavy bike, would I get it off myself? That's the harsh reality of getting stuck under a bike. Fortunate enough, I got out obviously, and then it just it gets a bit easier and easier, even though you're getting more fatigued and more fatigued. But obviously, if you stop at the right time before you're totally fatigued and recover, it's very, very doable. And once you pass that halfway mark, I've always gone, you got the halfway mark, that sucks. But as every kilometer passes, 1 kilometer closer to your destination, the desert got easier as well. So everything just became a more enjoyable. And that's how it went. And then I was very, very fortunate enough to not get stuck on any sand dunes but the last one. And that was because I was trying to be a bit silly to take on the steepest big red side. If you were getting stuck all the time and you had to dig your bike out or you had to take your luggage off, I don't even know how that wouldn't even be enjoyable. That would just be an absolute nightmare in my opinion. But if you can get over all those sand dunes relatively easy, you just got to have a bit of fitness about you, I guess, and give give it a good hard crack. But I tried to make the trip as real as possible. I didn't want to sugarcoat anything. I didn't want to make it sound like how beautiful it was, even though it was, because as much as you wanted to take in the sights, you took your eye off the road for 1 second and you're crashing effectively is what that means, in my opinion.
We saw that in the video. The couple of crashes that you had, you mentioned that it was because you weren't focused on the track.
Yeah, and it's just because you've got the sand. If it was an open sand dune and you can make your own track, it'd be great. But you're stuck to the four-wheel drive tracks, and you can sort of cut in and out of them. But if you just take your eyes off and get that front wheel up on the side without actually intending to do it, you just wash out. And then I learnt the faster you go, the better it is, unless you fall off. But speed is definitely a friend there, as long as you can factor in will your subframe handle the impacts, will your luggage handle the impacts as you go up and down. But if you go slow, it's just a disaster out there. You just can't get going, and then you just bog down and whatnot. So, but yeah, and the funniest thing of the desert trip was I assumed when I was sleeping overnight time, it was going to be nice and soft and I'd have a great sleep. But every bit of that desert, even though it looks sandy, other than the track, is full of something sharp, spiky. And I'm just sitting down in thorns. And I actually popped my air mattress in that night. And I don't know if the whole desert's like that, but
wow,
where I stopped, yeah, it was, you couldn't walk around in thongs. I was just piercing my thongs. So, but that was an experience, right? That's why you go adventure riding, to experience something different and take on the challenge. And then I think I only overtook two people. And I think there was a group of 3 motorbikes supported and maybe 3 or 4 other cars the whole trip. But that's about 550 odd kilometers. So not that many people on that particular trip. But I was warned it would be quite quiet out there. So
Yeah, that's from what I've heard with others that have done it. Like it sounds like because of the window that you did it at, that there really wasn't that many people there. Other people have described it that it's almost like a freeway in some cases where there's just constant cars going through. So
yeah, and I think that's, even though it's great that you've got support if something goes wrong, you run out of fuel or water. But I don't know about professional sand riders, but you can't just overtake a car out there. And if you're going the speed of the car, I can 100% guarantee you're probably going to just fall off because you're going so slow. You're not cutting through the sand. And then
yep.
normally the track's here and you've got some sand, about 20 centimeters or more on either side of the track. And that's full of bushes. So you can't even hit it with speed. So it's actually it's quite a hard place to overtake. And then you don't want to, unless the full
Yeah, no,
drive
I
is
can
going to be
imagine
nice.
that.
Yeah, yeah. So, but anyway, it's still awesome.
No, that's awesome. It's crazy that going into that you didn't really have much sand riding experience, especially desert sand, which is notorious for being difficult to ride, and to do it in the conditions that it was in. That's very impressive. From what I've seen on with other riders on that have uploaded their Simpson crossings, that a lot of them do it over 2 nights or some even 3 nights. So to cram it into that time, potentially not having that many four-wheel drives on the track made it easier with getting there on time. So it probably all worked out well for you.
Yeah, I think if memory serves me correctly, it was either 12 and a half or 14 and a half. I think it was 12 and a half hours of ride time. And that was over a day and a half, obviously. But I would have loved to have at least 2 nights out there, but I just needed to get going, unfortunately. So that's probably why I complain about the fatigue out there. But hey, like if I did it again, I'd probably be much better at it anyway and wouldn't be as tired. So just a first
So,
timer.
so you so you would do 2 nights if you did it again in the desert?
Yeah, if I was going to go out there for a purpose-built trip, 100%. I don't think I'd ever cross it just for the sake of crossing and trying to make it fast, because it's not, the risk versus reward there is not really anything I need to do again. But yeah, if I was going to do a purpose-built Simpson crossing, I'd definitely devote some more time to enjoying it, and maybe 2 nights, maybe even 3 nights. Who knows? Yeah.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Yeah, because I'm potentially gonna plan to do one next year, so I'm trying to gather some information to see what the best approach is with timing. And yeah, people say 2 nights and you're pretty good, but I think some people have crossed it in without sleeping. Like they've just gone, I think 9 hours or 10 hours. Someone on a DRZ just smashed through it. So you can go hard, but yeah.
And that's the reality. If you gave yourself at the very least dusk till dawn one night, if you can ride, you'll get through. And I can see how you can get through in one day as well, but it depends on what you're carrying. So I was carrying 9 days worth of supplies as well as my
Yeah.
problem. So if I was just to tow my bike out there, which a lot of people do, and was just to go only carry fuel and water and a bit of food, you would double your speed because you wouldn't worry about the weight on your bike. But I don't think I'd be lying, but if I had at one stage 10, 15, there's 18 kilos of fuel, not including the fuel tank. I had 12 odd liters of water. So let's say there's 30 kilos just there. And then I had all my clothes, all my camping gear. I would say I was up to 50 kilos on the back of that subframe. Not for the whole trip, but at that point in the
Yeah.
desert when I was fully, and I could feel every kilo of it. And that's what slows me down, because I was worried about breaking a subframe, and I'm trying to baby the impacts, I guess. So
So
yeah.
yeah, no, that's insane. Like the DRZ. So Sally, did she have the reinforced subframe at the time that you did the trip, or was that just stock?
No, at the time it had my version of a reinforced subframe, which was a bit of 5 mil mild steel bolted over the top because I cracked it already. Not just stock. I mean,
Wow.
you've really got to figure out how to stack it too. Like most of my weight sits over where my seat bolts to the subframe, so it's quite I don't think it would break there really in terms of that weight. But when I did have, I'm not too concerned about having 5 or 8 kilos of fluids on the back of the subframe. But when I had the full weight, yeah, I don't think, as much as I talk my bike up, I don't think that would last forever. That would have definitely taken on some fatigue. But hey, it's still going strong and it's done it, so it's all good.
That's bloody impressive. We'll talk about Sally shortly, but you had a stack towards the end. Well, in the video, it looked like it was potentially a bad stack. We didn't catch it on camera. How bad was that one? The one that bent the radiator.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually thought I was filming, to be honest, but I ended up. I don't remember what I said, but I think I actually turned the GoPro on when I've tried to turn it off, whatever it might have been. But I was getting cocky. My confidence was high, and I was certainly on the smoother section of the desert. And I was doing 60, 65k an hour, which might seem slow to some, but you're moving along when you're used to doing 40 with all the weight. So I was getting faster and faster. Um, and I just took I don't even know what happened really. I believe I took my eyes off the road, but next, I'm just gonna, I knew it was coming. I go, oh no. And I just hit the ground so hard. Why I had no injuries, I guess I'm very, very lucky. The sand probably obviously takes a fair bit of, it's not like asphalt or rocks. Um, and I hit the ground at 60k an hour, as simple as that. And luckily, I got thrown to the right of my bike, and the bike didn't land on top of me, obviously. And it just winded me. I was so fatigued as well at that point. I think I was at least 450 kilometers into the trip, and it just really made me realize, like, in my opinion, I was going too fast for the weight I had, for the fatigue I had, and it just made me realize, like, if it's not worth saving maybe an hour, then to just go 10k an hour slower, even though you can fall off at 50 as well. But because I was wanting to push to 70, 80, 90, and there were
Oh
sections
yeah.
where you were doing that, but it's not, why would I? I'm not in a race. I'm not doing the thinky race or something like that. So, and then when I hit the ground, that was the first realization of that trip, where I've gone, it's about surviving it, bike and rider, because so many people's bike will break, or their body will break, and then you haven't done the trip, and it'll probably just sit in the back of your head as a trip you've never done. So maybe it was a good wake up call, perhaps. And the bike, yeah, the radiator bent. Luckily, no damage. That was another very fortunate thing. And the only thing I ended up snapping was a strap on my saddlebag. So that was an easy fix. But yeah, it definitely shook me up, because that was a wake up call. That
Yeah,
was a
nah.
wake up call.
All in all, glad that nothing bad happened, and the DRZ just taking it like it always does with all the crashes that you've had on it, and that I've seen others have. It's incredible that they've built so durable. Have you had any issues while owning the DRZ? I think in an earlier video you've mentioned that you've done a engine rebuild on it. Was that because of an issue that popped up? Was it burning oil, or you just felt like it needed the rebuild?
Yeah, yeah, I will say I've done one top end rebuild at around 15,000, I think it was. And now I'm very much of the opinion it was not required at all. But also, the reason why that came about is that I love to learn. I'm pretty handy, but I love to learn my own mechanics as well. And I've never done a top end rebuild, but I was doing a pretty heavy enduro day, and turns out my bike does it regardless, and so does a friend of mine who's got the same bike. But when I'm on the hills, stalling it, not making up the hills, dropping the bike, it doesn't like to start. It'll start, but it's not like it just wants to kick over straight away. And then I happened to have a guy behind me, and he goes, "Oh, it looks like a bit of a puff of smoke when you started, but otherwise it's all good." So I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to do a top end rebuild, literally, so I could learn and use that as an excuse to do it. As I said, I'm of the opinion that
Yep.
was not necessary at all. So I wouldn't say that that was something that had to be done. Otherwise, no, I I'm pretty good at my bearings. Like, if I'm going to do a 5,000k trip, I will just put a new set of bearings in the wheels, for example, just because it's, to me, that's a smart thing to do. And then those the bearings that were in the wheel become my spares. So things like that may mitigate some issues there, but I've done nothing. The bike's stock standard. I'll do my oil changes as frequently as I see fit and oil filter, but otherwise no other mechanical works have been done other than what I've decided to add to, which might be like electrics or something. But it's pretty stock standard and running strong.
That's bloody incredible that that it's survived without issues. And I got to say, like from watching your video about preparing it, I think you're one of the most like meticulous with packing spares and the right tools, and the fact that you're already changing the bearings before going out on these trips. Like from other people that I've seen, they've run into issues because they haven't gone to that level. So I think based on watching your videos, like that's something that I would apply to my adventure riding, is that, you know, change anything that's consumable and can give you issues, but also just because you've changed it, you should still bring spares in case, you know, you could get there is bad bearings that you can get that are new. So I think that's definitely the right approach, especially given you're going solo. Like you can't rely on someone else having the right tool or whatnot.
Yeah, I think my approach to it is well, two things. Like if I'm going to do a big trip solo, I would hate to get out somewhere and say the bearings went and I didn't replace the bearings before I went, because to me that's just an absolute idiotic thing on my behalf. And in terms of the tools, I used to cop a bit of slack. Like I won on that particular trip, I had a rear sprocket strapped to my side bag, which weighs nothing. Like it was 200 grams or something. I know it all adds up, but my sprocket at the end of that Simpson Desert crossing, granted that sprocket had done a few Ks, it was so trash that I didn't realize what noise I was getting from the bike. But the chain was effectively dragging on the ground, and I had no more room to, and I didn't even know it had worn out so much. So if I wasn't close to home that night, I would have changed that sprocket because that was not going to last anymore. The sprocket was just absolutely trashed. So I had the sprocket there, and that's an example of, if I was still days away, like why wouldn't I just bring a sprocket if I know I'm going to do a hot 2 days in sand riding where it's going to get pretty worn out, no doubt. If you had a brand new sprocket, I'd probably handle it, but mine had already done many kilometers. And I'll always bring, like, if someone's felt my tool bag, they'll be like, what the hell are you doing? But once again, my other aspect of what I said, repairing or doing, cosmetic things before I leave, is if I was to be out there and there was an easy fix and I didn't bring that tool or that part because I was saving weight, why not just lose a kilo of body weight and carry an extra kilo of tools and parts, because you're on your own. And that's the thing with solo riding. You've got to be able to try to survive and fix your bike as you go if you can. So yeah, I definitely overpack in the tool department, that's for sure.
No, like you said, that's why not carry it, and if you can lose
Mm.
the weight to make up for it, that's just
Yeah, just
extra benefit.
yeah,
but
absolutely.
but honestly, I reckon Suzuki should sponsor you and get you a new DRZ, because I reckon based on your videos, you've probably sold hundreds of them, because you've shown just how capable a bike that was, you know, made like a design that's over 2 decades old can still do these incredible trips without issue. If anything, they're probably the least likely out of any bike that crosses the Simpson to have issues. So no, I think, and you, we mentioned before I started recording that I was actually very close to getting the DRZ. The only reason I didn't was that I had a really good deal on the WR250R that
Yeah.
I bought, but yeah, I was super close to getting one. And sometimes I think, damn, I probably should have got one, but you know, you win some, you lose some.
Mate, if I could count how many people have texted, commented on my Instagram or channel that have said, hey, just to let you know, I bought a DRZ 400E based on, this, and this, it would be no less than, I would say, 30 or 40 people. Now, that might not seem like much, but for every person that probably sends a comment, there's probably 100 people that don't, because I'm one of those people. So, look, Suzuki, Suzuki, if you're listening, I would love to have a free DRZ 400E, but I actually think, not that I know, but I actually think they're a vehicle that's going to be not made much longer. I hope they are still made, but a lot of countries are stopping them because of emissions or whatnot. Australia is very lucky still to get their E version, but Oh, look, if there was I don't know why they don't make a new one. I don't, not that I'm a motorbike maker, but I have no idea. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's from what I've seen, there's like the ABS issues that they don't come with ABS, and now they want road bikes having ABS. There's like the whole emissions thing.
Yeah.
So like you said, it's a shame that it looks like they're probably going to phase them out. But yeah, I reckon hold on to it while you can, because yeah, the bikes just aren't the same as they were, 2 decades ago.
Yeah, and I'll never sell mine. I'll just own, even if it blows up one day, it'll just become, because that's the one bike that truly got me hooked and pretty far into adventure riding. So I'll definitely keep that bike for as long as I can, unless it blows up and it's not in one bit. But yeah,
Yeah.
love that thing, love it.
So did you consider any other bikes before buying the DRZ? You've got, like I mentioned, I purchased the WR250R. You've got the Honda equivalents, which I think at the time would have only been the 250. Um, that's really all on the Jap side, unless you go heavier and go like a KLR or something. And then you've got like the Euro bikes, which people rave on about, like the KTM 500. Were any of those in consideration over the DRZ, or potentially even the DR650?
Mate, every single one of them was.
Yeah.
I can remember very, very vividly. I got rid of my BMW F800 GS, and I went shopping hardcore. I was on the KTM 1290s. I was on the BMW 1200s. I was on the Tiger. I even looked at the KTM 6 Dayers. I looked at everything. I had my eyes firmly set on a CRF 450L until I learned a bit about that. And I just kept bringing myself back to my BMW experience and the servicing, the parts, and just I really wanted to go a bit more in my version hardcore riding, but I could not justify two bikes. And I remember finally every single person I spoke to their credit, the shop owners, when I told them what I wanted to do, they said, "Don't buy this bike unless it was a big adventure bikes." But I knew in my experience that was going to keep me very limited to my riding experience going forward because I hadn't learnt that much at that point. And I finally ended up at a local store, Suzuki store, and I was telling the bloke what I wanted, and he pointed out the DRZ 400E. And my words to him were, "Again, mate, I don't want a bike that looks like it's got the bed spring suspensions. I don't want it because I just, because obviously it doesn't have, yeah." And he goes, "No, no, trust me, take it for a test ride. I've only got an SM model for you or an S model." So I took it for a test ride. It went nothing like my BMW, obviously max speed at 130k an hour, kind of going, geez, it's a bit wobbly. And but I thought the DRZ would be very similar. Not obviously, I had road tires on the test ride bike, but I just said to my wife, "I don't want it." I go, I could have gotten, I got that bike for $7,995 right away with an adventure package on it. So I pocketed money secondhand for my BMW. And I said to my wife, "I don't want it." I go, "Look at it." And she goes, "Well, what else are you going to get?" And so I literally just went, "You know what? I don't want to service a bike. I just want to be able to do everything." And I bought it. And I remember when I rode it home on the full knobbies and the soft suspension, I was getting speed wobbles at 100k an hour on the freeway. I'm like, "Oh, what have I done?" But it's, I did some more research. I learned about the bike, and I've never looked back. So I was never a diehard Suzuki DRZ 400E fan, no way at all. So she's done me well though, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
certainly. And you sound exactly like the kind of rabbit hole that I went down when trying to find the bike. I was looking at all of them, like you mentioned, the 1290s and KTM 500s and everything. And for me, it did come down to either the DRZ or the DRZ or the WR.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, like I said, it was more so around availability, but I think I would have been happy either way. Um, we could make a whole nother video talking about what you've done to it, and you yourself have made a modification video. But what, in your opinion, what's the number one mod if someone buys a DRZ that they have to do?
I would say, well, purely based on my body weight, I would say suspension. Um,
Suspension.
they are very, very soft setup. If you're, I guess, under 80 kilos, you'd probably be sweet. But for me at the time, it just made all the difference once. And I would recommend anyone who buys one is to ride your bike for the first 1,000 kilometers before that first major service. And then if you want to do your suspension, do it, because then you can experience a difference rather than, and that was advice given to me from the shop. If you just do it day one, you've never ridden one properly, you might not see where your money's gone to. But that bike became far more safer. And I believe that's probably another reason why it's done me so well, is because it's been set up properly, because it's just soft suspension from the shop floor. Simple as that. So that'll be my number one anyway, if anything, just suspension.
Yeah, I think that's the case with majority of the Jap dual sports or ADV bikes. I think that's everyone's take, is that suspension needs to be done. And even on my WR, I've been planning to. The only reason I haven't is that the place that I want to get it done is actually up your way, or at least it's in New South Wales. And if I want to do it, I've got to send it to them and then wait at least like a month to then get them back.
Yeah. Is that Technic?
Which, yeah, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. Good place though. Very good place.
Yeah, they specifically specialize in the WR from what I've seen. So they've done all the testing to try and get the perfect setup. So eventually I'll get it done. But to be honest, now's probably the right time, since I'm injured and not riding. But it's the last thing on my mind at the moment. So
yeah. I mean, it's not expensive, but I spent $8,000 on my bike, and the suspension setup was effectively just under $1,000. So that's a good chunk of money for what the bike cost overall, though.
yeah.
But as you said, if you get it done properly, your bike will be far better long term anyway.
Yeah, certainly. And so you mentioned you owned the F800, the BMW, prior to the DRZ. Would you ever consider going back to a bigger adventure bike, whether that's selling the? Well, you said you never sell the DRZ, but having one bike that's functional, being like a larger adventure bike, or can you see yourself maybe going to a two bike setup, or you're just not interested at all in having one of the larger, more powerful ADV
No,
bikes?
hopefully I haven't shot myself in the foot with my with my channel on a DRZ, but obviously that bike's not going to last me forever, and there's going to be a time where I choose to or want to try something else. Like, unless they brought out a truly updated version, I'd be pretty foolish to buy that again without trying anything long term. But I would love to have two bikes. That day will come one day, but it's not in my near future. And if I was to have two bikes, I would certainly have, around that 700, 800 cc size again. And then I'd have an enduro bike, so I could do both, best of both worlds. But I guess going back to one of the reasons why I wanted to go to a smaller bike, if I would have stuck to the big adventure bikes from day one, there is no way, I'm not a great rider, but there is no way I would ride how I ride now, because I would never have thrown myself into that terrain. So now that I've learnt what I've learnt now, and can, take on most things without being silly, I'm happy to try a big bike again, and hopefully those skills make me more comfortable on that bike. Because when I learnt on my BMW F800, I was just falling over everywhere, and I was trying big hills because I had all this courage, but I was getting nowhere, and I was just trashing the bike. So I think I'd love to give a good old 701 a try. They look like a pretty cool, capable bike, but they're too expensive for my purpose, because it will just get trashed. I mean,
Yeah.
the T7s are nice as well. I mean, I'd never say no to a big bike, but it has to be at a time where I can have two bikes, I think.
Yeah.
So I would, yeah, it's tricky. It's really tricky.
It's so hard, and I feel like everyone I've asked, like, there's no perfect setup of like one bike, two bike, and because you can always have something different, or a bike always offers a different riding experience. Yeah, the 701 or even the KTM 690, that's something I've really been interested in. I just can't shake the reliability concerns, and
Oh, I know.
I know they've fixed things, and like there were major issues that have been sorted in newer models, but then I go riding and 690s are having problems. I look on YouTube and people are still having problems, and that just turns me off. Even though they look like the perfect ADV slash dual sport, some people consider it dual sport, some people consider it ADV. They do really seem to hit the nail on the head in terms of the right amount of power and the weight of them. it's still just that reliability concern. It's just always at the back of my head, like, oh, I don't know if I
Yeah.
trust this taking it on the Simpson Crossing.
I think that's the nature of the beast, though. As these bikes become so fancy and so high tech, which is awesome, the littlest error, it's probably just a sensor of some sort, shuts the bike down. I don't think it's normally like a major engine problem. It's just these little things. Whereas on your bike and my bike, the DRZ and the WR, they're so basic that unless you've got a major fault in the engine, you can probably fix it because it's not some basic electrical fault. But as I said, I'm not a mechanic by any means, but when it comes to the electrics of those high tech bikes, like I don't want to be playing around with it, especially when you're out on your own. Yeah.
100%. And I mean, even with my bike, like to be honest, I'd preference having like a carbureted bike out in the Simpson, because at least, if something's wrong with the fueling, I can get in there and do something, as opposed to fuel injected. Like, I get a light on
Mm.
the dash, and what does that even mean? So at least for those ultra, at least for those ultra remote trips, I still think you can't beat carbureted bikes. But I guess these days, they are the systems are more reliable and everything, but you still get issues. Case in point, I was at well, actually, I attended Open Roads Rally, which is this rally event here in
Yep.
Victoria. Unfortunately, that's where I injured myself on the way there, so I didn't actually make it out to do the tracks or anything. But there was a 690 that caught fire and just completely
Oh,
melted, like to nothing. It was just the frame, and that was to
wow.
do with some fielding issues. So I imagine that happening in the middle of the Simpson. It's like, nah, you don't want that. So
Yeah, and it's you're only as good as your own experiences too, and there'll be other people who've had a KTM for 50,000 plus kilometers have had no issues, but yeah, I mean it's $1 million question, and if you could have 5 bikes, you'd be sorted, but if you have to only have one, then which way do you go? Big versus small? Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
yeah, it certainly is. Just shifting gears to something I wanted to touch on, because I know you've dealt with it personally now, is like injuries and riding. Well, I myself am recovering from an injury that not as severe as your ankle and foot one that you experienced on the mountain bike, but somewhat similar in terms of
Yeah.
the recovery and everything. But you you mentioned, so in the video where you were describing, what happened, and you mentioned whether you would get back to mountain bike riding, and whether the injury turned you off of it. Has that mindset changed? Do you think you'll get back to mountain bike riding? And the reason I ask is that the same approach can be taken to adventure riding if you have an
Mm.
injury. Because I know when I had the injury, the first thought was like, damn, like, why am I doing this to myself? And then me personally, I thought, well, I love this, like doing this activity. I'm not going to let an injury or something that's happened to me stop me from doing that. Is that the same kind of mindset that you're going into with the mountain biking? Or yeah, because yeah, injuries are never fun.
No, they're not. And mountain biking for me is literally only been a year and a half of a hobby, and my problem is when I do so, I just go straight into it. Look, for me, my injury was on the 4th of October. If you're looking back on this podcast, that was in 2022. So I'm now 5 months post injury, and I actually went on my first 2 mountain bike rides this week. Um, and the bug is right there. I'm standing next to the big drop. I'm standing next to the big jump. I'm like, I know I can do this, but I didn't. I did the very little jumps where the funny thing is, if I fell on my ankle, it would totally rip it apart again. But because there's so little in my head, I'm like, nothing will go wrong, which is probably a bit silly, but I want to do it. I really, really do. I really want to keep going hard at it the best I can. But this ankle injury I've got it will be a lifelong one. So it is not going away. I am getting by good enough, the best I can, but I'm nowhere near, let's say my ankle is probably 40% of what it used to be. I got it's just stuffed. I've got zero mobility in it. All the tendons and ligaments are healing, but the cartilage damage just doesn't isn't getting better. So I'm actually lined up in 2 weeks to see if I can get a secondary operation to make it somewhat better, which is going to be another probably 3 months of doing nothing. But if that's not the case, I've unfortunately sustained an injury all through a mountain bike ride where my ankle, whether it's next year or 15 years, will be fused together, and will depends on how well my body handles what it's got at the moment. But I can't hike on it properly. I can't ride properly, even though I'm doing it. But in saying that, if I relate that back to motorbiking, I don't go hunting jumps on a motorbike. So I'll do the biggest hill climbs that I can achieve, but that's all slow pace stuff, and you normally just fall backwards. Obviously, I've been lucky, but the mountain biking, I've had my injuries because I'm jumping and I'm going very far in the air. And obviously, if you don't land on your wheels, your body's not going to love it. So yeah, so I'm not going to give up mountain biking, absolutely not. But I have promised my wife that I will not do what I deem the dumb stuff. What that looks like, obviously, is as good as me deciding on the day, but it's not worth it because I have now got this. You know, I think the most hurting thing for myself is my physical capabilities, which I've always prided myself on, have gone. I can't just go on a 50K hike right now. I don't know if I ever will. So that is very disheartening. So for that reason, I probably will not do the real stupid things on the mountain bike because I've obviously learnt the hard way. Motorbiking though, I've had two major crashes on the road where one of them I probably should be paralysed to be honest, but I've been very fortunate enough to none of them my fault to walk away. And 15 years of riding, which obviously a lot of road riding before I got into adventure riding, apart from a sore shoulder and a sore leg, I've never had a major injury considering the crashes I've had. So everyone tells you mountain biking is more dangerous. I'm starting to believe it. But yeah, to wrap up your answer, I won't stop. But there is a point where you've got to tone it down. I think once you've learnt your lesson, as simple as that.
Yeah, it's I guess with the mountain bike riding is like I feel like you're wearing less gear, like even just like the boots aspect, you're not wearing big adventure or MX boots, which potentially makes a difference. And like you said, going like getting airborne like that, I think that's the same reason motocross riders are probably more at risk of big
Yeah,
injuries and breaking bones and everything, is because those guys are sending it over tabletops and everything. And yeah, I in the past I've done mountain biking, and I feel like I've injured myself more mountain biking than I did on the bike. So it's an exhilarating sport, but yeah, you definitely you get yourself in trouble pretty quickly. Um,
yeah, yeah. And we're getting older. I mean, I've learnt that we don't heal that well. And I honestly thought after my injury I'd just be fine in 3 months' time, and each day goes past and it's not fine. So it just becomes the norm to be in pain and have a joint that doesn't do what it should do. But you just got to crack on with it, obviously, but be a bit smarter.
Yeah, and applying that to riding, has that changed like your gear protective gear choices? Like I know something that a lot of people, and I know yours wasn't a knee injury, but people talk about not wanting to wear like knee braces because that can then cause other issues. Do you wear knee braces, or did your injury then make you think about purchasing them, or even like a neck brace or something?
No, I mean, with the mountain biking, I always had elbow and knee pads and pants at that point because I saw a few bad accidents with other people. Um, if I look back on that particular crash, just that protective gearing on Sloan saved all my skin, saved all my elbows and knees. No matter what I had as a knee brace or an ankle brace, that the impact was breaking something. So yeah, no, I don't wear anything extra other than on the motorbike. I literally used to wear just runners, jeans, and a shirt. So I've learnt my lesson there. So I always wear adventure boots. I'll always wear motorbike pants and a jacket unless I'm doing maybe slow enduro stuff. And I'll just put a shirt on when I get hot. But I don't have a neck brace. I've got no interest in putting knee braces on. But I don't see how that would be comfortable. But I've never had a reason to either. Like I don't put my mountain bike crash down to shit. I've got to strap my whole body up before I throw a leg over any bike anymore because I've just, as I said, I've been lucky with the slow speed stuff. I don't seem to haven't been hurt yet, but I just don't find that comfortable, I guess, to have all that gear on. I don't think it's necessary for the type of riding I do on my motorbike either, because if I'm going to fall off at high speeds, I'm getting hurt anyway. and I'm not really in the air jumping or anything like that. So I could have that wrong, but that's how I kind of feel about it.
No, that makes complete sense. Like they are different. Like you said, you're not jumping, and that's where most of the risk is. I got to say though, there was that video where you're riding with your mate on the mountain bike, and that's probably one of the most gruesome, like visually gruesome injuries
Oh
I've
yeah,
seen. Oh, I
yeah,
can't even imagine what you were thinking when like, when he pulled his pants and you saw it, like what would have gone through your head. Because to me, like if I had seen that, oh man, like my guts were turning.
yeah. I should have renamed that video to just bad injury, because at the time I was trying to get into mountain biking and make like a Sydney-based tracks, and that was my first one. But I had no idea. We were just going over these jumps, and I don't think you'd mind me saying, but he's not the most confident jumper, and I don't know. I went in the air and I kind of went, oh, I'm a bit tits up, and I luckily landed, and he did the exact same thing, and I'm just laughing really, and he's like, Lance, land, I'm like, oh shit, what happened though? When he put his hands on his shin, so he had to describe it to anyone listening, he had his leg in a 45-degree angle and he had his hands on his shin, like freaking out. And all I could see was his skin pulling down. And so I, at the time, thought, shit, this whole skin's going to fall off. But obviously that stopped when he stopped pulling down. Yeah, look, it was luckily I had a bit of knowledge of what to do and wrapped my shirt around him. Oddly enough, of that whole incident, the biggest joke of it all is that when all the paramedics came and the police came, I had no shirt on because I put it on his knee, but I had my GoPro chest mount on, and they thought that's how I was riding, and they were taking the piss out of me, obviously trying to distract from my friend and freaking out, make it a bit humorous. And I get that. I get that approach because it worked. And they wanted photos, and for another reason, go look at this belter on his mountain bike with no shirt on. But my shirt was on his leg, the poor guy. I was trying to put some compression on. But yeah, look, it was that's when I started wearing knee pads. And the funny thing is, he had knee pads in his car and forgot to put them on. And we're both of the opinion if he had knee pads on, that injury would not be there, and we would have just continued riding. So
Man,
I've worn knee pads ever since.
yeah, that sucks. It was the same with my injury actually. Something similar happened was where the day before taking off for this open roads rally, I'm in the motorbike shop and I'm like, I need to get some new boots. Like I've had these for 5+ years. They're getting pretty flexible. They've lost their rigidity. And I'm like, oh, I should buy some, but they're pretty expensive. I'll hold
Mm.
out. I'll get through this ride and think about it later. Now, if I had the new ones, maybe they would have stopped the injury happening, because it was in my injury. I came off and the bike landed on my heel and compressed it into the ground and ended up folding my toes
Ooh.
towards my shin, fractured a whole bunch of metatarsals. And potentially, if I was in a stiffer boot, that wouldn't have happened. And yeah, of course, I'm at the shop and decided not to get the new boots. So yeah, it sucks when something
But you
like
know
that
what?
happens.
It could have still happened anyway. So,
Exactly.
I mean, it might not have, but you'd never know. So I guess you can't dwell on it now. But yeah, it totally sucks. You didn't even get to the rally.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And I bloody paid for it and everything. I was
Mm.
excited, and yeah, you live and learn. So
Well, it's funny you say about the boots, because there's only been one time of late, because I've got very lightweight adventure boots as well. Like they're not, I wouldn't say, other than maybe deflecting some rocks and sticks, that they're going to do much protection. But on my Victorian high country, I had a moment where it was no need to fall, other than a big rock I didn't see, and I hit it, and my bike landed on my ankle that time, and that was the first time my ankle hurt for a whole day. Obviously, nothing major, but that was a potential break your ankle fall as well through impact. And someone said if you had such and such boots, you would probably be much better off. But I mean, I didn't break my ankle then. But how do you know? Like you can go all out and still come unstuck, I guess. But yeah, it's a
yeah,
tough question. It's a tough one.
I think I like me personally. Now that I've experienced this injury, and it was more of like a freak thing. Like in my case, I was going so slow and I just tipped over. Like I've had crashes, 60, 70 k's an hour where I've come
Mm,
flying off the bike and dusted myself off and I'm fine. But It's those unlucky ones where you just land awkwardly. And now it's got me thinking I'm probably just going to go for the best protective boots, spend the money and not have to worry about it, because dealing with an injury like this, I feel like I never want to have to do it again.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah. I guess something's kind of related to injuries, but more so around training. I mentioned at the beginning of the video, you look pretty swole in your videos. What's the secret? Like, are you uh, focused on training? Is that like a passion of yours? Because I myself, I have a powerlifting background, so it's something I'm quite passionate about. Unfortunately, another injury I've sustained is I've torn my pec.
Yeah.
Not through lifting, it was through Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but because of that, that's actually limited what kind of lifting and stuff I can do. But you yourself, are you like got a strength background? You into like bodybuilding?
Yeah, I think I'm very fortunate in the sense that I started training when I was, let's say 16 years old, with no knowledge. But so all my 20s was all geared around just getting like a typical teenager as big as I can, without ever taking anything other than eating food, obviously. I've been a big believer of that. So all 20s was all geared around being a bodybuilder, which looking back was, I don't know why, to be honest, but that's what I did. And then I had a few comps when I was 29, had really
Oh,
good success for my height, in at the time INBA and ANB, so two natural federations. After stand, so I got to about 113 kilos, I think was my heaviest for my body type. Was To give you an idea, I'm only 95 kilos right now. So I got quite large, in my opinion, but I hated it. I just always sweated and just always having to eat food. That's all I knew. So I did that for a decade. And then after my bodybuilding comps, I didn't enjoy being on stage. I just didn't understand how you can judge off 5 minutes of standing there. I went into strongman comps at 30. So from 30 to 35, I did the Sydney Strongman series. I
wow.
did New South Wales Strongest Man. And so then I already had the size. Strength was not where it should have been for that stuff. So I started learning powerlifting and strength training. But I always competed under 105 kilo category. And once again, with the information I had, I was of the opinion if I was in the open category, I'd be going against a lot more, probably probably advanced, more drug users. But it's not drug tested, so it didn't phase me. But I just thought if I'd be under 105, I should be safe. And then I learned one day, a few guys asked why I'm always under 105, so my height, because it was pretty hard to stay under that body weight. And we had a bit of a chat, and I just, at 35, you know what, I've got no chance in competing in this anymore. I'm getting older, and I just started losing weight. So I think to get my point, I'm very fortunate that now I can train 20 minutes a day, 3 days a week, and eat not much, and I can maintain, I guess, what I've earned over 20
Yeah.
years of training. So I've been at this for 20 years. If I want to gain weight, it's not that hard to just eat a bit more food and lift a little bit heavier. But since my ankle injury, I physically can't squat anymore. So that's very disheartening. So I've lost all interest in trying to do anything good in the gym anymore. So but as I said, I'm very lucky to maintain what I've got just through earning it, I guess, over 2 decades of training. So I love the strongman stuff. That was so much fun. I wish I started younger, but life goes on. You do new chapters of your life. So, and then I took up hiking and adventure riding and a more fitness side of things. So yeah.
No, that's awesome, and I reckon that strongman training probably came in handy
Oh yeah.
in the Simpson crossing, having to pick up the bike fully loaded. A lot of people struggle with that, and having to do it 4, 5, 6, 7 times in a day. I reckon you can't discredit that kind of training, even for riding, and that's kind of why I wanted to touch on it. Is that I feel like that's I'm not a prerequisite to adventure riding, but I reckon people getting in the gym and training probably actually would help you become a better adventure rider, just in the fact that you can pick up your bike if you're in an awkward situation. Also, just warding off injuries. Like, the stronger you are, the stronger your tendons are. So you're probably less likely to, pull a bicep if you're lifting up your bike or something. So yeah, that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons I want to touch on it.
It's funny you say that because I mean, I've picked up my bike 100 times, and I just, as soon as I fall off, if I'm not hurt, I straight away pick my bike up. I mean, I don't think twice about it, but I have seen of the YouTube videos that I have seen, people can't do it, and I can't relate to that, to be honest. So even my BMW, I
Yep.
could pick up quite comfortably. I'm quite tall too, so I'm 6'4", so I guess I've got some leverage as well. Um, but I don't know what that would feel like, and I think it'd be a terrible, terrible feeling. To not be able to pick up your own bike, even though obviously there's ways of doing it. But yeah, I probably, to be honest, I probably wouldn't be doing all the solo stuff if I didn't, because I can manhandle my bike if I want to heal, I can get out of trouble. If I've got to lift it or move it, I can. So I think that brings confidence with that ability that I said. You need to have the ability, confidence in your own abilities. So picking up your bike is one of them. Like, imagine if you dropped
100%.
your bike in a river and you couldn't even pick your own bike up to get out of the river, or push it out. So yeah, I'm very lucky there too, I guess.
Yep, certainly. I can't imagine a worse nightmare like being out on your own and not being able to pick up your bike, or even just from the embarrassment of having to call someone or something to help. So
Well, imagine
definitely,
taking your bags off every time to have to pick. Like, I know there would be a time where that may be necessary if you're stuck in mud or something, but that would be a very time consuming, effort and day, really. You wouldn't get very far.
yep, certainly. It completely wear you out.
Mm.
Well, we're coming up on time. I just wanted to ask you one more question, and I feel like I'm probably going to ask if I interview other guests, I'll probably ask them the same thing, and that's if say you won Tats Lotto, you had unlimited money, and you could only own three motorcycles. And before you answer, you can't say three DRZs. One can be a
Yeah.
DRZ, but you can own any three motorcycles. What would they be?
I'll leave the DRZ out because I've got one. So I would probably say, for me, I'll try something new. So I would have a 701 to have an intermediate
Hmm.
bike in terms of weight. I would then
Yep.
obviously 100%, I would go for the biggest, baddest KTM, or Kia KTM 1290, and top spec, just so I've
Yep.
got that as well. And then I would get myself, to be honest, maybe a WR 450F, and then have an enduro. Yeah, I'd just cover all bases. Get a enduro, middleweight, and big bike. Simple as that. And a DRZ I'd already have,
Yep.
so I don't need to get that. Yeah, that's what I'd do. That'd be awesome. What would you do?
I think you can't. Yeah, I think with your ones you can't go wrong. I think if I could only have three, and I assume I couldn't have my WR, I'd do probably something very similar.
Yeah.
Um, I can't think of a better. Not that I've ever ridden one, but I can't think of a better big adventure bike than the KTM 1290, because you're getting that brutal
Mm,
horsepower and on-road performance, which the only other bike I would consider is having like a pure road bike, but then you're still getting that performance anyway from the KTM 1290, so I wouldn't even need one. But then you can do all this adventure riding, and I myself, I like taking my partner on the back. So if the KTM 1290, you can do that, which with a lighter dual sports. Because previously I used to have a 10 700, and
yep.
awesome bike, phenomenal bike. But we tried to do two up riding, and she hated it. Like, I just was not comfortable at all, and I don't blame her, because when the seats one like seat where it's not elevated on the rear, it's just terrible, because your
Yeah.
helmets are bumping, they're up against you, you're bearing their weight. So yeah, the T7 was a no go. That's why I'm on the two bike setup at the moment. So I've got the WR, and I've also got a V-Strom 1000.
Yep.
Great bike, and that is like it's an adventure bike, but I don't do anything technical on it. But yeah, 100% I'd have like a 690 or 701. I'd probably have a KTM 300 two stroke as the enduro
Ooh.
bike, just for the ultra
Yep.
lightweightness. And yeah, it'd either be a 1290 or maybe even the BMWs. Like, they look bloody comfortable, the R1250 GSs. But I do imagine myself owning one at some point. I know my partner would like the heated passenger seats. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, if you got money, why not? Then it's no issue, right?
Yeah, well, that's what it comes down to. And at the end of the day, if I bought one of those, I wouldn't want to be taking it off road, because you drop it and you know. But you're scratching this $40,000 bike.
I know. It's hard to get your head around like making it, having a drop and a little scratch on it, but they're designed for it, but still, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was the same with my T7. Like, I bought that, and the first couple times off road, I was very like tense about not dropping it. It took maybe 2 or 3 drops, and I had crash bars on it, but it took maybe 2 or 3 drops for me to actually get comfortable. And then after that, I was just taking it through single track. Didn't care at all. But it's when you first buy it that you're like, especially if you're buying new, where you're like, oh, I don't want to start scratching plastics and everything. But it does. You do get over it pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's like with the DRZ. I upgraded my plastics purely because I burnt a hole in the side one after many kilometers against the exhaust. But I think $180. I had a whole new set of plastics. I
Wow.
mean, oh,
Oh,
yeah, and that was a decent bread. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. I mean, it's $180 and you
no,
can redeck your whole bike out. So
that's awesome. Like, I
yeah,
didn't actually realize it was that cheap.
yeah, it
Maybe.
was me neither.
Yeah, why not? Like, because I think
Mm.
you bought the black ones, didn't you? You blacked it
Yeah,
out.
for no other reason than I didn't like the yellow and white combo, and I couldn't get a full yellow kit at the time. They didn't, I don't know, they just didn't have them. And the only other option was all black. I thought, oh well, I'll give it a shot. I can always change it back one day. But now looking back, I probably should just went to the local wrecker and just bought the part that I needed. I didn't even think of that.
Ah,
But yeah, I just didn't want the yellow and white combination, so all black it was.
awesome. Nah, I know you mentioned earlier that you don't like the look of the DRZ, or at the time that you didn't. But I don't know. There's something so timeless about it that whenever I see
Yeah,
one, I'm like, man, I love it. I like the older looking bikes. Like even like the DR650. That was actually another bike that I was considering, but my dad ended up buying one, so he rides that. So I'm like, oh, I don't want to get the same bike as him. I think they look awesome.
yeah, no, me too. I love them now. Yeah, it's definitely grown on me. Let's say that.
Yeah, well, you've made a video saying it's the the best bike, so we
Oh, did I
definitely know
cop
you
some
love it.
slack for that? Yeah,
Nah, I own the WI, and I still agree that potentially the DRZ is the better bike overall, because you got all that power. It's still a bit more basic, less electronics, so
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
a lot of positives to it. But yeah, we'll wrap it up. I really appreciate you coming on the show. I've really enjoyed chatting about adventuring and bikes. It's something I'm very passionate in, and I can tell that you are. So yeah, it's been awesome.
yeah. No, well, thanks for the invite. As I said it earlier, I'm happy to chat to anyone who's happy to bring some more attention in Australia, especially about the topic and whatnot. And I wish you all the best for your future podcast.
Thank you so much.